injuries, and abuse across the state of Alabama. The attorneys, proudly sponsored by Hollis, Wright, and Couch, are here to serve you. Your tough legal by our experts, the attorneys with Josh Wright from the Hollis, Wright, and Couch Law Firm, and host David Lamb.
Hello and welcome into the attorneys. Appreciate you spending your Sunday evening with us. Over the next half hour, what we're going to try to do is we're going to put a panel of experts together. They are here to answer your questions, and throughout the program you will see ways for you to get in touch with them. So we encourage you to do so. Joining us tonight, a couple of our friends from the firm of Hollis, Wright, and Couch, Mallory Schneider and Steve Couch. I will get it right.
You got it right.
Yes.
That's right.
Good to see you guys.
Good to see you too.
Our topic tonight, elder abuse. This is so disturbing. The more you look at this here, conservative estimates put the number of elders who've been injured, exploited, or otherwise mistreated at about 1 to 2 million.
Yes, it's an astounding factor.
It is.
And what we're going to talk to you about today is how to spot elder abuse. Obviously, if you put your loved ones in the caring hands of medical professionals, you'd like for them to be taken care of and to be happy and healthy. And so we're going to talk about exactly what is elder abuse and what are the signs of elder abuse. How do you spot that one of your loved ones could be abused in a nursing skilled facility? And also we're going to talk about typically who's the most susceptible to abuse, who the abusers typically are, and what do you do when you suspect one of your loved ones who is being abused? Who do you call? And Steve is going to talk about, I believe you can tell us a little bit more about what exactly elder abuse is.
Yeah, I hope we get into a lot of specifics here tonight, but I'm just going to paint with broad strokes here in the beginning. You know, abuse, when I first started working on these types of cases, David, I thought abuse is one of those things, you know it when you see it. That's generally true, but there's a lot of different types that you don't necessarily see. The neglecting type, the psychological types of trauma that somebody can go under or be influenced by when they're being taken care of by a friend, family member, or even in an institution. With that last comment, let me say this. Tonight, I want to make very clear that we're not just talking about, generally when folks talk about elder abuse, they're thinking nursing home, nursing home, nursing home. That's true. That's one of the venues that abuse can take place in, but we're also talking about tonight skilled nursing facilities, which is something a little different than a nursing home. Likewise, there's those assisted living facilities. It's basically an apartment complex, and they have some medical care available to them. Also, there's types of things now that home health care providers, they just come out to your house and they may stay there for several hours. They may stay there only a couple hours for bathing and whatnot. But there's all different types of venues where abuse can happen, not just of elderly folks, which we're all concerned about, but you know, we're also talking about folks who, for whatever reason, can't take care of themselves, be it a mental incapacity, physical incapacity, etc.
And just so we're kind of clear from the start, in this, the statistic that I cited, injured, exploited, or otherwise mistreated, that's a broader claim than just physically abused, I guess, is what we're talking about here.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, the physical abuse, you know, the hitting, punching, kicking, that type of thing, I mean, that's one of those things when I said, you know it when you see it, that would be it.
Sure. Bruises,
cuts, scrapes, etc. They drop some money on the floor. Yeah, you can see that. But there's also those types of abuse that fall into that umbrella term abuse. When somebody is neglected, when they're left in their bed for hours and hours on end, they may have relieve themselves in the bed and they're not being changed. There's psychological abuse, there's sexual abuse, all those different types of things that fall under, you know, the category of abuse that we're talking about tonight.
Mallory, are there criminal as well as civil remedies for elder abuse?
Yes, there are. There's, in certain circumstances, there are criminal liabilities that can be imposed if you do abuse an elder. And I suggest that if you suspect there is abuse occurring, is that you call the police. You don't have to prove that there was actually abuse in order to file a report with the police. So that's the first thing I would recommend. And then in certain circumstances, there are civil penalties that can be imposed, because what happens with elder abuse is something's been taken away from you. You have been humiliated, you've sometimes been physically harmed, sometimes your money is taken away from you, because there is a type of abuse that involves financial fraud, where they take advantage of your finances and your financial situation. So the purpose of civil litigation is to make that person whole and to compensate them for the injuries that they have suffered.
Yeah. Some questions that we've got. One is, does elder abuse occur only at nursing homes?
I don't think so, not based on what I've seen over the last 16 years. I think it can happen in those venues that I mentioned earlier, assisted living facilities. It can happen in skilled nursing facilities. Nursing homes, yes, of course. It can also happen at home when you're talking about home health care providers or even family members who are there taking care of somebody who can't do it themselves. And again, you know, there may be situations where dehydration, that's a form of abuse. That's neglect, when they're just not getting enough fluids. I mean, I've had cases where folks have passed, died, expired because of dehydration, and I can't think of a worse reason to die than that, when you've got all the water, all the fluids, all the food anybody could ever want, which is 50 feet, 50 yards down the hall, and they die from something like that. To me, that just screams abuse. And, you know, we've seen those types of cases. We've seen types of cases where it might be psychological. Somebody's just kind of intimidating or threatening a person, and then they just kind of get scared, modify their own behavior in the nursing home. You start screaming like that again, and I'm going to put you over here in the corner, that type of thing. That certainly happens too.
Yeah. As far as those who are most vulnerable, who would you say of those victims of elder abuse, what are the similarities or the common themes in terms of the most vulnerable?
Well, first off, anybody can be a victim of elder abuse. It can happen to anybody. But most commonly, you'll see people who really they can't report it if they're mentally ill, and they can't communicate to their loved ones or to the caretakers that there's a problem. Or you look at people who maybe have an emotional dependence on their abuser. It could very well be a relative, somebody who's financially dependent on the elder and who's taking advantage of their financial situation. And sometimes those are the most susceptible because they do not want to report their loved one taking advantage of them. Yeah.
In terms of how you can prevent that, if you have a loved one that you're putting maybe in some sort of facility, what are some action steps that those folks can take to prevent this?
Well, I would say first and foremost, and you don't have to be a lawyer to know this, be vigilant. I think that generally from what I've seen and what I've read, people who are visited by their friends, family members, preferably on a day-to-day basis, are less susceptible to being abused. And then that's because there's people around asking how your day went, what are you doing today, how did it go yesterday, last night, etc. There's people around asking those questions, both to the resident or the patient or the family member and to the care provider. So I think, you know, that's a way to kind of prevent it from happening. And I guess I need to say this too. Tonight's show is not an indictment on the healthcare profession. It's not, because there are a number of nurses, LPNs, RNs, doctors, other healthcare providers, orderlies who are doing it right, who are taking great care of these people. But unfortunately, there's those occasions where somebody is abused in one form or another, and that's basically what we're talking about here tonight.
Right, and to kind of piggyback off of what you said about being vigilant is also maybe get your own primary healthcare provider involved in the care of your loved one when you put them into a nursing facility. Maybe get your doctor involved, see if he can go and make some rounds and visit your loved one to make sure that they're getting the kind of care that you would like to see them receive.
Yeah, good advice for sure. Time for our first break. As we head to break, more of your questions, if you'll get them to us, we'll be glad to pass them along to the attorneys from Hollis, Wright & Couch. Also, different ways for you to get in touch with them. You can call, text, email. Also find them on Facebook. Just search the firm, the term Hollis, Wright & Couch, or find them on Twitter. That's Hollis_Wright. Stay tuned. More attorneys coming right up.
I'm Josh Wright with the law firm of Hollis, Wright & Couch, and thanks for watching The Attorneys on Alabama's 13. Now, we hope you, a friend, or a loved one never need legal counsel for a case. But if you do, the goal of the show is simple. Provide answers and legal counsel when you need it the most. Your call to the show is free, so if you have questions specific to this show or related to other civil legal matters, call, email, or text us to talk with one of our lawyers. You can also follow us on Facebook or Twitter to learn about important legal news that could affect you or your family. Or simply contact us by going to alabamas13.com and click on the Attorneys link. We know your time is valuable, so thank you for spending it with us and for watching The Attorneys right here on Alabama's 13.
Some startling numbers as you look at elder abuse. You certainly need to be vigilant. The advice we're getting from our experts. We'd love to get your feedback. You can call, text, email. We've got a couple of segments left, so plenty of time for you to get your questions to our panel of experts. Our experts tonight, Mallory Schneider and Steve Couch from the firm of Hollis, Wright, and Couch. Appreciate you all being with us. When we went to break, we were talking about the value of being vigilant and paying attention, really being involved if you have some, especially if they're in some form of facility. How can you spot if someone is being abusive?
Well, can I take that?
Go ahead.
I think it's a couple of different ways, and I wish that I could tell people this is how you do it. This is the surefire way to test. This is the litmus test. I don't have that formula. I wish that I did. But there are some signs to look out for, and what we're talking about is spotting an abuser, somebody who is doing this to your friend, loved one, or just somebody that you may see at a nursing home, assisted living facility, etc. And I think things to look out for are just general attitude with the resident or the family member, whether or not they actually pay attention to the person when they're talking. Does your loved one or family member, are they frightened? Do they look like they're withdrawing, or do they get scared when this certain person comes into the room? That's something to watch out for. I mean, you can ask about histories, backgrounds on the people who are taking care of your family member or loved one. Go to the facility administrator and say, tell me his background. Does he have a criminal background? You're entitled to know that. I think for somebody taking care of my family, I'm certainly going to ask that. And what type of person are they? I think people generally have this innate ability to kind of get a sense for somebody. Do I trust them or do I not trust them? Just by sitting down and talk with them. And that's why when I say vigilant, not only is it important to come by and visit the person that you're there to see, your friend, family member, loved one, but also talk to their care providers. And it doesn't have to be just in the room. Talk to them out in the hall and get to know them, because there's going to be a small circle of people who are assigned to your friend or family member or loved one to take care of it, and I think it's important to get to know them.
We've talked a good bit, seems like, about physical abuse. What about the other forms of abuse, and from that standpoint, other forms of abuse and things that folks can watch out for?
Well, there's many different types of abuse. There's mental abuse. You can belittle somebody. You can humiliate them. There's sexual abuse. There can be inappropriate touching of an elder. And then, of course, there's physical abuse, and there's neglect. And there's many different forms of abuse. Basically, if your loved one, friend, elder that you have put into the care of medical professionals, if they're not getting exactly what it is that they need to get to be healthy and happy and go about their normal daily living activities as they would outside of this nursing facility, then that could be considered some form of abuse.
Yeah, let me add to that if I can. I think it's important for people to know that if you are a person who is, or you have a friend or family member in a nursing home, skilled nursing facility, etc., you have rights. There's something called a patient bill of rights. One of those laundry list of rights is to dignity. You're entitled to your own dignity. So when you're asking me about other types of abuse, the neglect that Mallory mentioned, here's what you can't do, and this is an example. You can't take a group of people and set them in a room in front of a television and then ignore them. You can't do that. You need to interact and stimulate them, because this is all about quality of life. This is where these people live. Right. Not only that, but you have healthcare providers who are supposed to be professionals. And again, as I said before, this is not an indictment on an industry. because there's a lot of people, healthcare providers out there that care about their patients and take good care of them. But occasionally there are those times, unfortunately, when you do find a person who is not doing it right. And people want to say, well, it's that person did it, that person did it, it's her, she's just an evil person. I want people to understand, look, I've been prosecuting these types of cases for some time. This firm has. And what I found is part of the problem, I think, is at a corporate level. It goes higher than just the people on the ground. A lot of what you see, or what I've seen, is staffing issues. You can't have one person taking care of 30, 40, 50 people who have some acute illnesses. That is not humanly possible. But if a corporation sets a cap or a limit on the number of hours and nursing personnel who can man a certain shift with a certain number of people, I mean, that's a problem. I think it's important to know the ratios between patients or residents and healthcare providers. That
really seems like a good question on the front end whenever you are considering a facility for your loved one.
Absolutely. I think you should not only interview the personnel there and get to know them, but you need to interview the administrator. Not just the person who's saying, here's a contract sign here, here's a contract sign here. Talk to the people who work there. Not only that, maybe visit with some of the other relatives. I mean, I've been to several of these facilities and talked to people, not just my clients, but these are pleasant people to be around. They have a history. They have their lives, and they're really interesting folks to talk to. But yeah, it's important to interview the administrator. Find out who the owners are. If they can't tell you who the owners are, then you might want to think about going somewhere else, because generally these skilled nursing facilities, nursing homes, are corporate owned, and they own not just one, but they may own 40 across this state, no telling how many they own next door. But there's corporate policies and procedures that are handed down and tell them basically, here's how you do it on the ground. And it's nothing wrong with saying, can I see the policies and procedures? What do you follow? How do you handle this certain situation, etc.? Have a full interview, because this is, I mean, ask those questions that are important to you, because act as if this could be you laying there. Ask what you would want to know. Chances are you're going to cover something that your loved one would want to know for themselves as well.
Now, Steve, one thing you mentioned, you talked a lot about administrators and nurses, LPNs, RNs, things like that. At what point should a doctor intervene with the care of your loved one?
Well, depending on the acuteness of the injury and the reason that they're in the home in the first place, or assisted living facility, etc. Some skilled nursing facilities have their own doctor that they've contracted with to come in and look at all the residents who may need to see a doctor every so often. I tell people, and what I've seen a lot of people do, if you've got your own doctor that you've seen for years and you're comfortable with him or her, and they're handling your certain malady or condition, there's nothing wrong with saying, I want Dr. Smith or whoever my doctor is to come in here, and they can't prevent that from happening.
Time for us to take our second break of the evening. As we do so, reminders of how you can get in touch with the firm of Hollis, Wright & Couch. Really easy for you to do so. You can call, text, email. Also find them on Facebook. Just search the term Hollis, Wright & Couch, and on Twitter as well. It's Hollis_Wright. Stay tuned. A final segment of The Attorney is coming right up.
I'm Josh Wright with the law firm of Hollis, Wright & Couch. Now, it's easy to take safety at home or at work for granted, but crime can happen anywhere. So that's why for this week's Legal 4-in-1, we're answering the question, is your employer liable if you're a victim of a crime in the workplace? Generally in Alabama, employers cannot be held liable for the criminal acts of third parties, including physical assaults, robberies, shootings, burglaries, and even sexual assaults. This rule is to protect employers from being blamed for acts that they couldn't predict would happen. However, there are two major exceptions to this rule. One, if your employer knew or had reason to know that the criminal act was likely to occur, or two, a special relationship existed between your employer and the criminal. Let's take some examples. If you work in an area of town where crimes frequently occur at your job, and your employer has not taken steps to make sure the work area is kept safe, your employer may be liable if a crime happens to you. Or if the person who committed the crime is a coworker that your boss knew had a criminal background, your employer could also be held liable. Our advice to you is to be diligent and take measures to be safe. For example, check your surroundings. Keep your vehicle locked at all times. Have someone walk you to your car if you leave the office late. Even check with the police department to learn if you work in a high crime area. If you do, then check with your employer to see what measures they are taking to keep you safe. Communicating with your employer is generally the best way to make sure the area that you work in is safe and that you're on the same page with your employer. Please remember, your call, email, or text to the attorneys is free. All of us at Hollis, Wright & Couch want to help answer your questions on real issues you face. Remember, a competent lawyer will respond to every question you send in. That's our pledge and promise to you, the viewer. Thanks for always watching The Attorneys right here on Alabama's 13.
Go back into the attorneys, our final segment, talking about elder abuse, but a few minutes remaining. If you would like to get your question in, you can call, text, or email that to our panel of experts. In researching the topic here, research suggests that elder abuse is significantly under-identified and underreported, that as few as 1 in 6 cases actually come to the attention of authorities. What's getting in the way of that actually being reported?
I think it's reporting itself and those who do report. I mean, it's funny, in handling these cases, you'll see things that happen to a person that end up with physical marks on their body, but there's no mention of it in the medical record.
Yeah.
That's interesting that happens, and I know I may sound like a conspiracy theorist, but I'm telling you what I've seen.
Right.
In addition to that, I've noticed that there's an ability for people in the healthcare profession to self-report. I don't see a lot of that happening, candidly, for various reasons that people can figure out for themselves. In addition to that, I would say, lastly, that I think that generally from what I've seen in those cases where I end up taking and filing are cases where people can't speak for themselves and they don't have the ability to tell somebody, this happened to me, that happened to me. You have to wait for those physical manifestations of abuse, be it bed sore, etc., to manifest themselves before you know somebody's being abused. So there's an inability to vocalize and articulate what's happening to them. Right.
A question that we've got here: what is healthcare fraud and abuse as it concerns elder abuse? Healthcare fraud. Healthcare fraud
that I've seen and read about and seen cases about are those cases where you're talking about care that's being provided, allegedly provided, to an individual. That health care being billed to Medicare, Medicaid, etc., some institution or body or fund that's being billed for health care that's not actually being provided. That's health care fraud. There are statutes out there that prevent that and punish providers who fail to provide the actual health care that they're billing the government and other facilities for. And there's whistleblower statutes out there that protect against that type of thing. So if you suspect that, I mean, you see that on a bill or something, you need to kind of start inquiring with a lawyer or the administrator of the facility.
Mallory, give us some action steps if we suspect elder abuse. What should we do?
If you suspect elder abuse, you should report it. Report it to the facility, report it to the authorities, report it to social services, report it to as many entities as you possibly can. And like I said earlier, you don't have to have proof of actual abuse to report it. What's important is that you submit a report and then you contact an attorney and let them know what you think is going on. Yeah.
Well, for you all, we have about 2 minutes remaining, but just quickly, what are, from an overview standpoint, what is most often needs to be done in terms of elder abuse? If folks would do what, would it significantly reduce this problem?
Go ahead.
In order to significantly reduce elder abuse, it's kind of the theme of our discussion we've had today, is to be vigilant. It's to make note of what is happening on a day-to-day basis with your loved one at that nursing facility, and to keep in contact with them. That's important not only for their well-being and their happiness, but for their health as well. And in order to ensure that the abuse is not occurring, you have to be vigilant with the healthcare providers, your own doctor, and by going and physically checking on your loved one and look at their arms, look at their legs, make sure that there's no bruises, no marks. And as soon as you suspect anything, get them out of there.
Let me add to that. I agree with everything Mallory said. I think you're right. Report it to the state health department immediately. The administrator, there are numbers that are supposed to be listed where you can contact. The facilities are supposed to provide these numbers for residents and their friends or family members, et cetera. So do that. Also, don't stop talking to the staff there. Like Mallory said, ask detailed questions. What they eat yesterday, what they do, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Also, keep in contact with the administrator and find out the rules, regulations, because these are not mom and pop owned homes. These are corporate owned facilities.
Some really good advice. Be vigilant, I think, is the overarching theme here. Be vigilant about your loved one. We appreciate you guys being with us.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much. This time just flew by. We appreciate you being with us as well. We leave you with how you can contact the firm of Hollis, Wright, and Couch. Again, we'll be back next week. Don't forget, you can find them on Facebook. Search the term Hollis, Wright, and Couch. Twitter, Hollis_Wright. See you next week, folks.
Thanks for watching The Attorneys, sponsored by the law firm of Hollis, Wright, and Couch.